Because up there, the problem with you
First of all, I'd like to thank, where are they, Kevin and Carmel very much this evening for organising this evening. Thank you very much indeed. Much, much appreciated, apart from those that are over 6 foot. I also understand that post-meal we are into party games. Yeah. Organised by Steve. Now, we were going to have stand up and sit down bingo, but nobody can stand up at this end, so we're not with that. Anything that he says, we do, okay? Yeah.
Indolent. Answering the question. What do you got? Peter, you've got to look intelligent. Get him out of we had a friend who
with orange sauce.
we have so many restaurants and bars. Yeah,
it's on the fuse box has like a door on it that goes, when you open it, it's on this like
You have to go.
We used to have runner ducks. Indian runners.
Oh yeah. We would hold a loyal toast, but I think that is terribly partisan to have a European club that toasts the King of England. So in which case we'll go neutral and we'll have a toast to the new King of Denmark, Frederick X.
Thank you very much.
Good evening everybody, thank you very much for coming first of all. It's a pleasure to have you all in the Cave Bar. I've been the owner now for, half owner for 6 months, since July, and I bought it off my very good friend who some of you know, Nigel, who's owned the Cave Bar for the last 15 years. The Cave Bar actually started in 1974, so we're celebrating our 50th year this year, so it's a very special year for us. But just to look at a little bit of the history behind Capistrano before the Cave Bar. Capistrano was developed by a gentleman called Ken Brabant, who was Canadian, and he came here in 1969 with his wife Annie, who was French, and a friend of theirs who was a property developer. And they had this idea of building a purpose-built holiday village. It was one of the first in Spain. They bought 35,000 square metres here in Capistrano, and they paid a huge amount, they paid 137.5 pesetas per square metre, which in today's currency that works out at 82 cents per square metre. And that's how it all started. So Ken Brabant was the idea man. He had this concept to build a village a little bit in the style of Frigliana, which people could then buy into. They advertised this to people all around the world, Japan, Russia, the UK, all over the world. They had people coming over for weekends. They brought them over to sell them the properties. And one of the gentlemen that Ken met when he was doing that was a gentleman called Robert Rutherford. And now Robert was a very well-known architect in the United Kingdom, and his specialism was swimming pools. So when Ken said to him, "What do you do?" he said, "Well, I build swimming pools." Ken said to him, "Well, you build a swimming pool, I'll build your house." So that's how we've got the most amazing. Does everybody know the swimming pools here in Capistrano? We've got 2 communal swimming pools, and they're magnificent. They're really something. They're really very, very good. And they were built by this gentleman, Robert Rutherford, who was a friend of the Duke of Wellington. And it was the Duke of Wellington who suggested, rather than look at Marbella, look at Nerja, because he thought it was a much better place. When they built the swimming pool, Ken was showing this area to a young South African who also had Canadian, there's a lot of Canadian influence here, who also had Canadian residency. His name was Phil Donaldson. And Phil was a young guy, and Ken said to him, what do you think you could do with this space? He said, I could build a bar there. So this is actually, the swimming pool is just over by where the toilets are. You see the wall is a little bit arched on the left-hand side. That is the swimming pool.
Is that the shallow end or the deep end?
That's the deep end. That is the deep end, yeah. So he had an idea, he said, I'm going to build a bar there. And then the Cave Bar was born. 2 years later, in 1974, they inaugurated the Cave Bar, and then it's just gone from strength to strength since then. There were some very, very well-known people who were in here in 1979 having a few drinks. Again, another Canadian pair, that they were called Chris Hannay and Scott Abbott. Little bit hippies, and they'd given up their work in Canada. Their parents had bought one of the original Capistrano villas, so they said, we're going to go to the Nerja and we're just going to spend some time there. And when they were sitting in this very bar having a drink, they were thinking, we're going to come up with a board game. So for many, many nights they were coming in here, they were thinking about what they could develop, and they had an idea which turned out to be Trivial Pursuits. The idea for Trivial Pursuits came from the bar, and also if you look at Trivial Pursuits, the pie, when you're next in the Balcón de Europa, have a look at the end of the Balcón de Europa, and you'll see it actually looks a little bit like a pie from above. So that gave them some inspiration. They sat here for many, many nights, drank a lot of beer, wrapped up a huge bar bill, and they said to Phil one day, right, we've got this idea, we haven't got near the 6,000 questions yet, but we're on it. Would you like to invest? Phil laughed at them and said, no way. Anyway, they kept trying, they kept on coming, asking him questions, and eventually he said, well listen, your bar bill's almost that much anyway. They wanted 1,000 US dollars, Canadian dollars. And in the end he did a deal with them. He was the only person in Nerja, they were around asking everybody. And Phil said, in the end he said, yes, I think we'll just shut them up than anything else. They disappeared. A few years later, Phil was here in the bar. Some of you may well know Phil. The old owner. He was a lovely guy. He died unfortunately about 15 years ago. But he was in the bar, behind the bar, and received a phone call, and it was one of the Canadians. And he literally shouted us to the bar, if they want more money, tell them to go away. But they didn't. They sent him a cheque, and they made him a very wealthy man. So he had a percentage of the Trivial Pursuits. He was always very quiet about it. He didn't really want it to be known, but he did make a lot of money out of it. So that all happened here in the Cave Bar. And as I said, this year, 1974, we're going to celebrate our 50th anniversary, which is something to be very proud of, especially in this industry where bars and restaurants don't usually last that long. And I personally, as just someone who's just come in, thank you very much for coming. Come again. And watch out on Facebook, because I'll be advertising all of our parties this year.
Thanks. Thank you, Aaron.
And thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Aaron. Well done, Father.
Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Guys, you know the type of thing, bingo, you know, where we have thousands of cards with hundreds of numbers and it takes all night. We're going to have a version of bingo in a moment. The pub quiz, where you get hundreds of thousands of questions that nobody knows the answers to. Yeah, we're going to have a game of, we're going to have a little pub quiz as well, but they're going to have a little bit of a slant to them. Both the bingo and the pub quiz, and we're going to finish up with a little game of gambling with some cards. Tap them 3 times. Turn the top one over. Turn the bottom one over.
I think we're all
9 and 10.
Hooray. Magic circle that way.
And we have so many links.